Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to those watching virtually and after the fact. Last day of the mid-year conference, last afternoon. I'm going to try to keep us awake and alert. So if I see you nodding off, no, I'm joking. Thanks so much for the honor of being here. I'm going to borrow a faculty technique I saw Giuseppe Fazzari use yesterday. He had everyone raise their hands to prove they could raise their hands. I'm going to ask you, let me hear you all say, ah. Again. All right, so I know your voices work. I will be asking for some reactions. I will be asking for your thoughts, your answers to questions. And I don't want to embarrass anybody, but we are a safe crowd, right? We all know each other. We all know this business we are in. Our topic is America at 250, the rule of law, asking questions for results. The key point here is asking questions. This is my not so subtle way of sharing with you my love of asking questions. And I hope as we go through the time, you too will appreciate the ability, the techniques of asking questions. In this session, I hope to kind of meld together very lightly some of the ideas related to the rule of law, leadership in our courts, and the use of questions. Emphasis on the use of questions. So why my interest in questions? When I was a very young court employee, one of my coworkers teased me and said, "Why do you ask so many questions? You're always asking questions." And I took great offense at the time. Fast forward about 20 years, and as a court consultant, I made it my job to ask questions. And during some of that time in my employment at the court, General Jurisdiction Court, I was the one sent into troubled departments. For a period of about 4, maybe 5 years, if there was a department in crisis, administrator couldn't get along with the judge, administrator had problems with the staff, department was misperforming, I was the one sent in to stabilize the department. Again, I got to tap into my favorite thing of asking questions. So for a period of 4 or 5 years, I was the person that went in the crisis, asked a lot of questions, helped the group rebound, sometimes even help hire the new administrator, at which point I had to exit. I didn't own it anymore. But I use questions. So I love questions. I have a bunch of material on questions that I'm going to share with you. And I invite you to think about, when can you use these? How can you use these? Do you have any interest in using these? And in a minute, I'm going to ask for anybody to use their voice and tell me, what is a favorite question that you might have? Adding to my interest in questions is, along my professional development, I had the opportunity to attend a course on coaching, professional coaching. It is a discipline all in itself. I am not a certified professional coach, but I had exposure to the techniques. And in fact, I carry a 20-page document with me that has all kinds of questions that coaches ask. And we'll come back to that in a little while. I also think that the different roles that we as court leaders play lend themselves to asking questions. And the premise is, questions I'm going to share, I think they can help us as court leaders get information, think about what we can do, ask the right questions to help our courts can maintain the rule of law. There have been several sessions during this conference that have really touched on questioning. And I was making notes to myself. Yesterday, the session taught by Giuseppe Vasari on court principles and practices even had a segment where he talked about the importance of knowing and understanding what employees want and need by asking. The session on preserving the rule of law in the Age of Disruption, taught by Sandra Engel and Eileen Gerstenberger, that also had questions in coaching techniques and unlocking potential performance, taught by Norman Meyer. That had a big segment involving questions. And then the core session on workforce management had information about understanding what employees need for employee development. So lots of our sessions have been, skirting around. We should be asking, we should be making inquiries. Well, we're going to dive right on into it, and I'm going to share scads of questions. I got way too many up here. I apologize. All of this is in the PowerPoint in the app. I would invite you to take a look at it during and after and see which questions you might use. Just to recap, here's one rendition of the rule of law. Access, equal treatment, independent adjudication. We can use questions to figure out how well we're performing in those areas. As an introduction about questions, I have been collecting all the questions I've amassed over the years and looking for new sets of questions. And I came across, I think, 4 different sources that show different reasons for questions. Here's one long list of those different reasons. It might be we want to probe for information. It might be we want to check the status. It might be we want to get different perspectives. So this is a big, long list of the purposes for questions. Here are the question types we will review. It is my premise that we as court leaders can use a lot of these questions and can really improve our leadership, improve the workplace, improve the performance of our courts. Okay, here's where I want you to use your voice. Anybody have a favorite question? Can be workplace or not. Oh, good, I see a hand.
Why are we doing this?
Oh, say that again.
Oh. Why are we doing this?
Why are we doing this? Good one.
I have a coworker that loves to ask people, if you were a type of cheese, what cheese would you be and why?
Love it. If you were a type of cheese, I think I heard somewhere, if you could come back as a tree, what kind of tree would it be? Similar. Anyone else? Favorite question? That's loud. I hope that by the end of the session, you have a whole series of new favorite questions. All right. Let's come at this way. When do we ask questions? I put little teeny labels down at the bottom. What are the best questions we've asked? What are some innovative questions? What are some novel questions? What are some great questions? And what are some odd questions? Let's fill out this bingo card. Again, time for your voice. What are we doing? That's a good one.
So maybe this would be under odd and maybe would answer the previous slide, which is, honestly, how could you be so stupid? I mean, honestly, and this is just dealing with people over time, how they don't, their initial reaction is, I will ask you to solve my problem, and I'll do that by asking a question without actually doing any work or anything in regards to that. So
that is an odd question. How can you be so stupid? How many times have we wanted to ask that question outright? Yes.
What do you need from me?
What do you need from me? Very good. Very good. Yes. Hold for the mic, please.
What are your expectations of me?
What are your expectations of me? We've got one up here, and then I'll take a last one from the back over there.
For innovative, I am a tech manager. So one of the questions I always ask is, what are the associated risks?
What are the associated risks? I like that one. We're going to see some of these come up as I go through all of these questions. In the back corner over here, yes.
What are your goals or interests?
What are your goals or interests? Excellent examples. This is a contrived exercise. These aren't really odd, awful, innovative, or anything, but I thank you for offering up the questions that occurred to you. I think back to my many years in court employment. There were years and years and years when the boss did not ask me any questions. Years and years and years. Maybe that's another contributing factor to why I think this is such valuable information. This content comes from the NACM Core Competency on Leadership. And in that competency, these 8 roles of leadership are identified. I love this content. I use it over and over in sessions that I teach. Here, I'm using it to illustrate some of the roles that really need us to use the power of questions. I've highlighted those with the blue bars: innovator, strategist, diagnostician, communicator, collaborator. Those are obvious areas where I think leaders use questions. But when I finished this slide, I thought, wait a minute, all of them involve questions, don't you think? All of them involve the use of inquiry to understand the status, the needs, the progress, the tasks. So, roles of leaders: visionary, innovator, strategist, diagnostician, motivator, statesman or advisor, communicator, and collaborator. These are all roles that we perform. These are all roles where we can use questions. At the risk of someone saying, why did you go back to such basics? I'm just going to do a quick mention of the elements of communication. We take it for granted. We don't even think about it. But we are doing these things. We're trying to figure out who's the sender. We're preparing the message. We're encoding it. We're thinking about the channel. How are we going to send the message? We're thinking about how's it transmitting? Did it get received? Did it get decoded and understood? Did we get feedback? This is all part of the communication process, which relates to using questions. And there's a great presenter, NACM has had him multiple times, named Greg Gray, who talks about the 93% rule. How are we doing in terms of being successful using body language and tone? That should add up to 93, does it? Yeah. Most of our communication is coming through body language and tone, not just words. So that's another thing to think about here. All right, let's move into these question types. I have, as I said, been collecting and researching a slew of questions, and I have organized them in these 8 categories. Each month, I post a briefing document on one of these on a website that I co-host with Norman Meyer, Phil Knox, and Peter Kiefer. Some of you may know those names. We post materials on that site, courtleader.net. Starting in January of this year, I posted the first issue on court leadership and asking questions. That's what this content comes from. Right now, there are 3 briefings up there: the introductory issue, the issue on employee questions, and the issue on smarter questions. If you want to read the content, head to courtleader.net. Let's start with employee questions. These are questions generally that I recommend using to interact with employees. In the earlier answers you gave, you offered up some of the questions that fit in here. Here they are. Get out your binoculars to read this. I'm sorry. There are 3 categories of questions up here. The first is structured questions. These are questions that are suitable for employee surveys, satisfaction surveys, and in fact, many of these have been taken from the Court Tools measure on employee satisfaction. They are best used as rank or forced choice rating. I have used them in my career. They have been very, very helpful. They're good for employee feedback in surveys. And here's some that parallel what you have mentioned. I know what's expected of me. I can express my opinions, and they are considered. Key point there, and they are considered. I get the training needed to do my job. Let me pause and ask, how many of your courts have used the Court Tools measure on employee satisfaction? I'm glad to see so many hands. Do these questions look familiar then from that survey? Yeah. The court I was in, we had 9 years of data using these questions. Very, very helpful. A lesson learned. It did not necessarily mean that we were all A's on the answers. It did not. But it every year gave leadership some good content to make improvements. Middle section here are good open-ended questions that are good for feedback. And I used these a lot when I would go in my crisis and problem-solving assignments, and when I had new staff that I didn't know very well and wanted to hear from them. What should I do more of? What should I do less of? What should I do differently? What's the number one thing I need to address? These are also good questions. And lastly, particularly for brand new leaders or supervisors, every time I would go into a new crisis unit, when I sat down and met with the staff, I would ask some variation of these. Now, it doesn't mean I was going to necessarily change everything, but I wanted to have an understanding. Tell me about you. What's your work style? What do you need? What's your biggest frustration at work? What support do you need to succeed? On one of my court assignments, I was hired as the new court administrator following 2, not 1, 2 prior administrators being released from employment. 2 before me. I sat down with every judge and every court administrator and asked these questions. I kept them in a notebook. 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 years later, I had that as a great compendium, a great resource to remind me. I remember that about Joe. So these are very good, especially for new leaders or leaders new to a work unit. These are questions to ask of employees. Okay, when I raise this sign, what does this say? Question. When I raise this sign, I want you to offer up a question you heard that was of interest to you. So, ready? Somebody. Right beside you, Erica. What should I be doing differently? Thank you. Sometimes that's hard for leaders to ask. Now, again, I'll frame this by saying, just because I'm asking doesn't mean I'm suddenly going to do backflips or I'm suddenly going to change, but I'm adding it to the repertoire of what I need to understand. Okay, question back there?
What is your biggest frustration at work?
What is your biggest frustration at work? Thanks, very good. These are, again, employee-based questions. Yes? What's the number one thing to focus on? A very important one. A very important one. Again, in my career, I have known many leaders who did not want to do this, thought it was too risky, I'm a believer that this is worth doing. All right, this was employee questions. Let's head into the next group. This group is titled Smarter Questions. This comes from Harvard Business Review. I love this series of questions. There are 5 categories: investigative, speculative, productive, interpretive, and subjective. Another way of looking at how to ask questions. And again, we see some interesting questions up here. What solutions have we not considered? How does this fit with the overarching goals? I like this one. Are there differences in what was said, heard, and learned? These are great questions. Okay, time for some ideas. What do you see up here that's of interest to you? Front row up here, Erica.
Have we consulted the right people?
Have we consulted the right people? We in courts can't do much all by ourselves when we want to make a big change. We in courts are influenced by other partners in the system, right? Sometimes it's the vocal ones consulting with us, but we haven't consulted the right people. Very good. So I commend you to this set of questions, a very interesting way. Think about what you need to ask. Investigative, what's happening? Speculative, what if? Productive, now what do we do? Now what? Interpretive, so what? So what do we do about it? And subjective, what's unsaid? What do we feel about this? These are very different approaches to asking questions. Next area is what I've labeled as alignment questions. These are questions where we can check with colleagues and staff to make sure we're understanding and aligning leadership, practices, principles, processes. You choose. A bottom bullet up here says, helpful to decode the priorities of others, of bosses. Let's see what we have in this list. I like the one, what keeps you up at night when thinking about this topic? That would be a particularly good question to ask someone up the hierarchy. Also, what's going to break if something goes wrong? Different interesting questions to check alignment. Again, these are useful to check understanding between employees and bosses. Looking at Lupe in the back, do we have any comments from our gang online? All right. Okay, how about this? What catches your eye up here? Yes, over here. Lupe? Over here. Thanks.
When are we relying on assumption instead of clarity?
Very good, and you have good eyesight too. When and where are we relying on assumptions? A biggie. A biggie. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
What do you wish you had more time to work on?
Yeah. What do you wish you had more time to work on? Now, again, doesn't mean I'm automatically going to give you more time and eliminate the deadline, but it might open the discussion. Might open the discussion, and it definitely increases the understanding from me as boss to you as coworker about what's going on. These are alignment questions. Next group is called success questions. This comes from Harvey Mackay. He's a prolific writer on workplace issues and communication topics. And these are interesting questions. And by the way, you're going to see some parallels across these different categories. These are good questions to ask, as he puts it, to unlock success, to make sure we're headed down the right path. Let's see what we have up here. The very first one. What's the greatest lesson you ever learned? What are you learning now? How has failure shaped you? Back to the day when I went into a crisis department and I interviewed everybody and made notes, some of the things I asked them about were not work-related. What's your hobby? Tell me about you. Again, 5 years later, those came in very handy because I'm not going to remember everything. They came in very handy for me to have an understanding and to set them and me up for success. Interesting one up here. How can I add value to you? How can I add value to you? Volunteers? Anything we see in the success questions? Have you used any of these? Are you stretching or asking? Oh, good. She's asking.
What does success look like for you in this role?
Yeah. What does success look like for you? Yeah. Yeah. Again, a great series of questions coming at it from a different angle to ultimately get more information as a leader, as a manager. Here's a powerful set of questions. These are under the title of team questions. These are useful to ask the team and to get constructive feedback on how things are functioning. What's the most important thing your team is focusing on? What's working well? How clear are you on priorities? You know, I'm thinking about the usefulness of these for a criminal justice coordinating committee or a group of disparate players that are needing to come together with a common goal. Where do you need more support? We heard that earlier. Number 8 up here, is there anything on your plate that shouldn't be? That's an interesting one. But it might be well worth asking. These are team questions. These came from a variety of sources, and in fact, Norman Meyer in his presentation used one of these same sources for the questions that he suggested asking of employees in your court. Are we measuring the right things? What's a recent win you had with your team? Another good set of questions. Does anybody have any immediate reaction? We've gone through 3 or 4 of these sets of questions. Anybody have an immediate reaction about what you've seen so far? Back there. Other than enough with the questions.
These are posed as questions that one asks of others. And there was a question on the previous slide that I would have asked of myself.
On the previous slide?
What failure shaped me?
This one?
Yes. How has failure shaped my life? How's it shaped my work? And it got me thinking about how applicable these are going both ways.
These are definitely applicable going both ways. And I'll interject here, I have made it my practice at the end of a calendar year to take stock in the workplace. What have we accomplished? Where have we fallen short? What do I need to do better? Remember those, what do I need to do more of, less of, differently? I've made it my personal practice to tell you how much I like asking questions. So these are useful for us to evaluate ourselves. Thank you, good observation. Over here.
Yeah, so if you ask these questions, you need to be prepared to hear the responses.
That is the truth.
Yeah, and you can't ask these questions just for the sake of asking them. If you get feedback that is actionable or, even hard. You need to have a plan to implement anything that you can or make changes where you can.
We can't just ask these questions because we're going through the exercise. That means we as leaders may have to take a little bit of a risk. And we may hear some bad stuff. We may hear things we did not want to hear, right? And we need to have in mind something that we can do to make use. It's like giving an employee survey and then putting the results on a shelf and everybody wondering, why did you ask me to spend the time? So very good observation. Thanks. Question over against this wall.
Yeah, I was just going to add in, and it follows right off that comment, is you also have to have created the space for the answer, because when we're moving so fast, you can't fly by these questions. And when you ask, you have to pause and really have the space for someone to answer. So it was just striking me that these are so good and we need to create the space for that.
That's a very good observation and a good lesson learned. Create the space. Think about real time to listen and to contemplate. And if it's in a one-on-one, it might be easier, but it might be harder because we're face-to-face. If it's with a coalition or a team, it might be easier, but maybe not. Good example, good advice.
Along the same lines of you may not want to hear what they have to say and creating that space, I think we need to follow up. When we ask a question about an evaluation of ourselves and they give us an answer, it isn't just about we're going to make a decision about what we're going to do. We have to follow up and ask them, what does that look like to you? Follow up with more questions, because I think that builds trust. And when you build trust, then the next time you ask the question, they're going to be a lot more honest with you because you give them that space. You create that safe space where they can ask you, they can tell you more about what they think you should be doing, and they'll answer your questions.
We need to think about the follow-up. We need to think how we're going to use it. That makes me interject with this. Currently, I'm working as a volunteer at Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport. My whole job is to help travelers in a crisis. And the first thing we have to do is ask them more questions. Wait, tell me a little bit more. Wait, let me double check. Where are you going? Where did you lose your suitcase? Who's coming to pick you up? What door are they supposed to be? The same thing applies with using these questions. It isn't just go through the motion of ask the question, thanks so much, see ya. No, it's the interaction, and that's what all of these lead to, the human interaction. Great comment, thank you. Up here. You didn't know you were going to get extra steps.
Need steps.
On the next slide, on your team slide, you had, where is it? The learning. What are we learning? Where is that? Number 10. What's your biggest learning this month? I think we also need to empower our teams and provide them with the tools so that they can learn and give them access to that. Because I think that's really...
Not only asking the question, but provide things to the team so they can work on this, so they can leverage this feedback. Great answers, great reactions. Thank you. Power questions. I like this one. Comes from a source called Power Questions Build Relationships and Win New Business. Well, we in the courts don't necessarily want to win new business, do we? But these are good questions. I like number 1. Are we doing anything that is no longer important or effective? I am sure our colleagues would have answers to this. Are we as leaders ready to respond? Think about it. Take the info given to us. Early on, your comments were, what are we doing? Why are we doing? That's up here. Do you know why we do it this way? Good question. If we can act on some of these are powerful to help us make improvements in the workplace, for our employees, and even for our own job satisfaction. Number 6 is a risky one up here. Can you point to a recent management decision you didn't understand and wish you knew more? But a good one to ask. I'm thinking about role model leaders I have seen in the past, and they really made use of some of these questions, and they were willing to be humbled with the feedback. And when we gave the employees survey questions using the court tools measure, our court leadership team had to be willing to get some brutal feedback. What did we do with it? We sometimes brought it back out via the supervisors to share, okay, we heard, just for an example, you don't know how to do task ABC. Okay, what do we need to do about it? Maybe get training, maybe cross-train, maybe move employees. We have to be willing to take the risk. Number 7 is a biggie too. What could court leadership do to communicate more effectively? Not all of us are going to be comfortable with this. Not all of our leaders are comfortable. But there's some really good ones in here. What do you love most about your job? That's one of the questions I would ask when I went into the crisis supervision role. What do you like? What do you least like about your job? Now, maybe I could take that feedback and make sure their set of tasks tapped into their skills. Can't always do it. These are useful to engage with employees and get their engagement with us. These are also good ones to challenge our thinking. This source says, knowing the right questions to ask is more important than having answers. I like that. Okay. Signs going up. Over here. Thanks, Libby.
So interestingly, I actually kind of took a different perspective than you did, because I looked at these questions. I thought these are actually some of the easier questions than previous questions that you had, because I think you can start with this and have almost a little bit of a layer between. So it's not as, I don't think it is as brutal. So I actually pointed to number 6. And I thought, oh, that's a great question, because it's not like what decision did you make, but really what did management make? What are things that we really need to know? I think these are great starter questions where you can begin the process of getting feedback from your folks and not feel like, it's going to be all directed to me. And so that you can begin that process of, pulling that information. So, because the power is like, you're giving them power to then do that. Mm-hmm. And so you begin that dialogue and then maybe go to, because I think some of your earlier questions were like, could be very, very brutal. Whereas these could be, and very direct, whereas these could be kind of intermediary and begin the process of dialogue.
I like that approach. These would be particularly good for someone going into a troubled operation, a troubled rollout of a program, someone who needs to understand better. Did I see another hand? Yes.
I kind of wanted to piggyback off of number 6 and what he just said, the part about wishing you knew more on a management decision. I think this gives an opportunity for staff to let managers know what parts of decisions they might need clarification on, or know where that information or why we're making this information. How does it benefit them as court employees, as to lead and help with the process of the daily work.
And we know the employees have those questions. Why are we doing it this way? Who made this decision? Who thought this was a good thing to do? Yeah, so think about which of these. Maybe the title power questions is misleading, but some of these might be good ones to start with. So while I've got 8 categories, again, I invite you to think about what can you pick and choose? Which group might you want to try? What's needed in your current work environment? It's up to you. You can make your own list of good questions to go back. All right, anybody else? Did I miss a hand? Okay, let's move on. Here we come to the coaching questions. In the coaching profession, how many of you have had any kind of training or exposure to coaching profession skills? A couple of you? Yes. The key thrust there is to ask non-confrontational questions to get the other person, the coachee, to think, maybe to check assumptions, but not to give opinions. Am I faithful for those who've had coaching training? A lot of focus on asking questions, but don't give answers. Let the other person kind of help them think through, what the heck do I do with whatever my challenge is? Here are our coaching questions, and they're divided here into different categories. Questions for discovery and learning, questions for exploration and creation, and questions for action and execution. There's some interesting questions up here. What can you do better than anyone else? Where have you been successful? Where do you waste time and energy? These are really good for professional coaching, not strictly in the workplace. To get someone who's having some kind of hurdle, to get some insights on how to overcome it. I like the first bullet point in the middle block. What's the most exciting outcome to imagine? That kind of prompts us to think, wow, there could be something exciting, something good, something that isn't just a problem staring me in the face. These are coaching-based questions. What actions do you need to take but are avoiding? That's down in that bottom block. This might be good for us asking ourselves, working with a leadership team. What is it we're avoiding? I can't remember where it was up here. What's the elephant in the room? These are coaching questions. Well, let me ask this. How many of you have used these kinds of questions in your workplace? If you have, raise your hand. Great. So somebody give me an example of which one of these you might have used. Yes, back there. Thank you.
What do you need to learn to reach your goal?
What do you need to learn to reach your goals? Yeah, that's a good coaching question. Who else? Anyone else? Middle of the room. Thank you.
I like the what is a different way of viewing this situation?
That is a wonderful one. What's a different way we can view this challenge, this situation? Maybe even this project, this initiative, this negative pushback we're getting. What's a different way of viewing it? Very good. These are coaching questions. The whole focus is on asking and not giving an opinion. Over here, thank you.
What are the talents? What talents do you have that aren't being used? I've used that a lot in one-on-ones, and oftentimes find out skill sets that we didn't know we had.
What are the talents that you have that we're not using? Great coaching question for a leader to ask. Maybe a good coaching question for us to ask ourselves. Very good. These are coaching questions. Several years back, I had come across a book, I'm going to botch the title, something about great leaders ask good questions. And I wrote an article, top 12 questions court leaders should ask. Here they are. It paralleled what I saw in that book. What is our purpose, our mission, our goal? What message do we need to share about us, our goal, our work? How the heck are we doing? Talk about a direct question. What do we need to revamp? What do we need to refresh? So these are 12 questions that were kind of labeled as court leader questions, and they pick up some of the similar sentiments from the other sets, but these are specifically for us as court leaders. Some of my favorite here, number 8, are we continually assessing ourselves? We can do that by using staff surveys. We can do that by using performance metrics. We can do that by having staff meetings. We can do that by getting feedback in a variety of ways. Number 12 is a biggie. How do we sustain changes and enhancements? How do we hold the course on the progress we've made? We may not be holding the course, that's okay, but it would be a good thing to ask and check in. Signs going up. What do you see up here that you find interesting? Could you use any of these? Could you ask these questions of your bench? But picking up on prior advice, we need to be ready to listen and respond. All right, any questions on this?
Janet, I'd
Yes.
like to comment when you asked about judges and magistrates. I think number one is critical. What is our purpose, mission, and vision and goal when we talk about implementing new programs in the court?
And does the program comport with the mission and goal, or is it a project du jour?
Right. Is it a task-related project
Is it a
or is there a
task?
correlation? Yes.
Very good point. Thank you, Erica. Okay, so court leader questions. That's the 8 different buckets of questions I have to offer. Here are some tips. If you're going to use these questions, prepare. Are you going to allow enough time to listen? Are you going to allow enough space for the person to give you feedback? Do you do it one-on-one? Do you do it in a group? Do you do it in a staff meeting? Part of that preparation is timing. Is now not a good time because of everything that's going on to do this kind of touchy-feely interaction? Might not be. What's the message you want to send? How are you crafting this interaction? And back to the 93%, what's the tone of voice and the body language? So tips. Just another slide. Think about the setting. Some of these questions would be great for a staff meeting where it's a nice, well, hopefully it's a good environment for some roundtable sharing and discussion and learning and leadership sharing why we're doing things. Figure out the setting. What do you want to get from this? What's the goal from asking questions? It shouldn't just be, I learned all these great new questions at NACM, I'm going to go back and use them. Although that might be an interesting thing to try. Who are your partners? Can you use some of these questions with your partners? Just as stakeholders. Funding agency. Maybe one of the reasons I liked asking questions so much was because I also thought it bought me a little bit of time to elicit information before I spoke. Maybe. What are the results you hope to get from the questions? I've arbitrarily grouped these under titles: power questions, coaching questions, smarter questions. I think what I would hope you do is kind of go pick and choose questions from different categories that might work for you to get more information, self-assess, organization assess, etc. Here's that list of why questions, the reasons questions might be asked. Quite a variety. Sometimes we ask to learn. Sometimes we ask to investigate. Sometimes we speculate. We ask questions about how will this new pilot program work and what are our objectives in this program? A variety of reasons. This slide reminds us of the parties in the justice universe. It's not all inclusive, but which of these questions might you want for these different realms? Some of the questions might be really good for your staff and your team, but not so good for elected officials. Some might be really good for your leadership group, but you'd want to think about use with a bench meeting, right? But I'm fairly certain that there are questions up here that will work in all those environments. OneSource has a great set of information. We should do a listening audit. We should evaluate ourselves on listening. Am I open to others' ideas? If we're trying to sustain the rule of law and we need to engage with our justice partners on some of these pretty heavy subjects, are we willing to listen? If we aren't, then now might not be the time. It's like if we come to work because we've been awake all night and we're just absolutely worn out, today might not be a good day. Am I actively seeking feedback and input? That's a good one up here. Number 5, of course, I like because it says, do I ask questions in every conversation? I like that one. Anybody know what this 85% in the circle means? Pretty close. 85% of what we learn comes from listening. 85% of what we learn comes from listening. Parallel that with the 93%, what we're getting from tone and body language. There's a lot going on all around us all the time. How much is sticking to us and how much are we missing? This source from Success Magazine says, as a listening leader, we're going to have better connections. We're going to build our and the other person's confidence. We're going to get ideas for action. And it maybe help with consistency. So again, the chart of the questions. Let me put this up one more time. Is there a particular category you like the best? Oh, front row, yes.
Janet, I'd like to raise a different dimension of these questions. I'm a fire chief, an EMT. I and my colleagues respond to the sorts of things that most people don't see, and that I wish the hell I never saw. And the result is what is called vicarious trauma. Seeing someone else in trauma causes trauma for me. And this happens to you in the courts as well. And until you ask that question or open yourself to that kind of information from your staff, just think of the trauma that they are encountering from traumatized people. And it's in every walk of the court. The place we can't keep employees is drug court. And that's because that's all that's happening there is trauma. So how do we as leaders create, for EMTs, we have to do debriefing and talk through what happened to be able to continue to live with it. How can you create an environment for your staff so that they have that same sort of a way to unload the emotional baggage that they have accumulated today or over a lifetime?
Very insightful. There might be another category called trauma-informed questions. And I also heard you say something about you need to debrief, you need to get it out. Think about instances in your workplace where maybe a work unit was just struggling. Maybe they had a bad customer. Maybe there was an outburst in the courtroom. Might some kind of debriefing session be useful to elicit feedback and help everyone kind of calm down, feel better that they don't have PTSD and they can still dedicate to this work in courts? Very good comment. That prompts me to interject another question that occurred to me. What can I learn from this? On my annual evaluation of how I'm doing, based on your earlier comment, that is one thing I ask myself. What can I learn from this? What am I meant to learn from this? I may not have an answer right away. I may not like what I tell myself, but it's helpful.
I just wanted to add on to that comment or share some things that we've done in our jurisdiction. So one thing I started adding to interviews is asking what people do for self-care or for fun, and kind of letting them know ahead of time, this is hard work. And so it's really important that you have something outside of here and tell me about what you do for that, because that gives me a good idea of kind of where people are at and their boundaries and things like that. But also, have been very encouraging and open with my staff about the same thing, self-care and taking care of yourself. And it's funny because once I kind of made it safe or laid that foundation, now they put on my calendar their weekly therapy appointments and they're very open with me about, I got this going on. But I think that's great because we've kind of normalized it in our workspace, and I myself am open with, I'm going to counseling too, and you got to do these things. And then the last thing is, I think that we need to remember, although we're a court system, we can still have fun with our staff. And so we have worked really hard to just do silly things to help us connect and kind of get over some of the serious stuff. We did a whole Olympics themed 2 weeks. We do an Easter egg hunt every year. We do, just silly stuff that I think is really important, and we kind of tend to overlook. And then as courts, we're like, oh, we can't, that's too silly. We can't do that. But they love it, So just some comments on ways we've addressed that, because you're absolutely right. The work is hard. It sticks with people, and we have to normalize that.
I so appreciate that as very sage advice. The work is hard. There are deadlines. There are scrutiny of how we're doing. We work in close quarters. We work in public spaces that don't always have the best amenities. We need to remember, to me, this message is make sure to allow time to take care of ourselves. This series is on asking questions. Interestingly, I think my next series is going to be on resilience, because increasingly self-care, dealing with sadness, trauma, disappointment, rude awakenings, we're all in this together. We can benefit if we figure out how to deal with it. Thank you for bringing up two pretty vital things. I appreciate it. Anybody else have a comment they want to interject? Yes, up here.
I just had a quick question with learning more about, AI and the technology advancements within the court and really everywhere. My question was back to your 93% of communication is body language and tone. So I'm noticing that a lot more communication, especially in the courts, is done electronically, right? Through chat, email, virtual meetings. And so I'm curious if you've ran into difficulties with that communication barrier, being that meetings are held virtually, or communication from leadership is oftentimes sent through, using AI tools, which takes away that human emotion. If you've experienced that in your consultations and kind of how you're navigating those.
I have not directly experienced it. My anecdotal, off-the-cuff answer is everything is harder. We need to check understanding, loops back to all these questions. Just the other day, I got an email and I fired off an answer. An email is an old-moded example, outdated, out of the modern new technology. I fired off an answer, came back later, reread the email. Oh my God, I totally missed what they were asking me. AI is going to be that on steroids. And if there is any chance for the interpersonal relationships to be avoided, I am afraid for it. I am afraid for it. Valid question. I'll look forward to you helping me prepare a set of questions on that. Okay, we have a comment in the back row.
I was just going to share, you mentioned earlier about the surveys. I think I might be a little bit different than most in the audience. I work for a local government, and I am the court administrator for our municipal court. We handle mostly traffic and minor misdemeanors and things of such. So I look to our city manager for upper leadership. However, of course, we have, a number of departments where we cross-connect. We do a survey every year, and I think what I find most rewarding is after the survey is done, the directors come and we talk about the results and the responses. But in addition to that, I think what's vital is that if you have the opportunity, that you include folks at different levels to bring forth insight on their experiences. And once you allow folks to, provide feedback and offer suggestions from all levels, front line, from bottom up or top down, that, you engage and people are more happy when they're able to be a part of the decision-making process. And so that can, help with energizing morale and allowing your staff to be a part of, the process to make the workplace a better place.
That is a lived experience, I can tell. A great example. We need to make sure we are allowing time. We need to be as inclusive as we can, which means we may naturally have some biases against some of these partners and against some of their opinions. We're going to have to manage it. The inclusiveness of asking and taking feedback, and with employee surveys, oh my gosh, the importance of having some follow-up. And when we're dealing with other bodies in the government, it's good to have the collaboration and the lines of communication. Thank you. All right, comment right up here towards the front.
I just wanted to ask if you've ever come across, while asking these questions of your employees, that they maybe had an aha moment of, maybe I should find somewhere else to work, or this isn't for me. Like in those crisis units, I mean, some people, if we're being honest, some people are there for the paycheck. They don't really care about the work. They're not invested. They don't, so I feel like sometimes I would hope that would happen for their own sake, right? Like find somewhere else that makes you happy, but maybe these questions can help with that.
Yes, indeed, I have had that. And yes, indeed, I have been in the process of asking these questions and the tears start flowing. I'm talking from top executives, not just entry level, because it is so good to get it out. That's kind of what these questions are doing. And yes, the follow-up discussion might be, well, okay, this may not look like the best place for you, or you may not be the happiest here. What can we do to set the wheels in motion? Yes, I have had that. Again, that means we as a leader need to have composure. We need to be strong ourselves. Well, I might want to cry too, because I hate my job too. I got to put on the uniform and be strong and encouraging and listening. Yes, so another reminder of what you might encounter. How are you going to deal with it? I don't have the perfect answer. All right. So I couched all my love for questions in this concept of using questions to maintain the rule of law. I do think you can use some of these questions to think about how well is your court doing, following mandates and laws, and being accountable, and being equitable and fair, and being transparent. I think you can use some of these questions to get feedback about your court, your organization, your work unit, your collaboration with justice partners. Anybody want to offer any final takeaways or advice? We have filled just almost 75 minutes doing nothing but talking about questions.
Thank you. I want to do a follow-up on the AI. I do a lot of work in that area, and Right now, we're working on educating our judges. But I think us, this group, the court leaders, supervisors, managers, and administrators, it can be a very valuable tool. And if you use it appropriately, it really helps me be a more clear communicator. And I think what we are seeing and what the fear is that our frontline staff, our staff are trying to use AI to just generate information, to generate an answer. And that's not the appropriate use. And I think rather than thinking, how do we stop them from doing that? I think the more appropriate response is, how do we educate ourselves first on how to use AI to make us better communicators? And then how do we train staff on how to use that tool appropriately?
Another good lesson learned based on personal advice and experience. Good one. Looping back to some of the questions in the earlier groups, what's our goal? What's our mission? How are we doing? Are we adhering to it? How can this be used to help us to adhere to it? All right. I thank you for attending. I thank you for letting me expose you to all these questions. I hope you can come away with your own mini set of questions that might be good to ask for self-evaluation, for working with those you directly supervise, for overseeing your overall organization. A wealth of questions up here. Thanks for indulging me. And I'll ask you one last question. How'd we do? Cool.
Thank you.